Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Experts podcast. So truly grateful to have each and every one who tune in and week out to listen, learn, and grow. And today, you are going to learn from Daniel Cox. He's our very special guest today, and he's going to be talking about real estate, but real estate with a difference as to what is happening, the trends in real estate with the innovation that we want to learn and know as to what's happening. So I'm excited to learn about real estate, and I know he's going to give a ton of value. So I want to welcome each and every one to the show. Daniel Cox, he is the CEO and founder of Sustainable Luxury Homes and Developments. He is reshaping green real estate with smart data and premium design. Daniel is a visionary. He has over 30 plus years of experience pioneering sustainable luxury homes, blending both ecological innovation that blends in the responsibility with high-end living. So what Daniel is doing truly is incredible. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. And thank you so much for that generous introduction as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, you're welcome. So, Daniel, I want to start by asking, can you share your journey? What
Mm.
inspired you today in sustainable luxury development?
That's a very good question, and it has been quite a long journey. So, I actually, as you can tell, I do have an American accent, but I've been living in Sydney, Australia for 23 years now. So, this just past September, it was my anniversary here of 23 years. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It has been quite a journey. Um, so I actually grew up in the U.S., in Eastern Washington State on a very large farm orchard, and probably the one of the largest still single family ran orchards globally. And from that, I really learned from my parents and my grandparents all the conservation that we used to do and still do on the land, right? So how we consume energy, how we consume raw materials and water, especially, and all the different things that we used to do just to make sure that we kept the land and productive as well as then a viable resource for the future. So with that mindset, I went through school, background accounting and finance, and then went into the Washington State Auditor's Office instead of going into one of the big accounting firms. And with that, I really was able to learn a lot more than just the numbers, but high risk and compliance, and learned a lot about what we were doing way back then as far as the environmental factors and things like that, and ended up being the Washington State's fraud investigator as well. So it was quite interesting work. But then I went to start working for one of the utility districts and ran two of the largest hydroelectric dams in North America. And that was a very interesting time because we were just renegotiating these long-term contracts with our investors. So the city of Seattle, Alcoa, Microsoft, Boeing, Amazon, etc. And also one of those investors was the Native Americans as well.
Mhm.
So as a coalition together and consortium. So we had to do a lot for the conservation and environment around and along the river, the Columbia River in Washington State, and learned so much through what we wanted to do, both as a beautification, but also as restoration, as well as then maintenance for years and decades to come, and really learned a lot through that as well. So uh, I actually do a lot in data and tech, and am a serial entrepreneur in that area. And through that, I've actually built a couple of different sustainability platforms as well. And that accumulated all of my knowledge, all of my background together. And part of that then was put into my property development and construction. And so that's where I'm at. It's very big here in Australia. We've had really lax compliance and building standards over the last few decades. And so now with a lot of the stuff that we're doing as far as our climate action, the sustainability, net zero, et cetera, that's really being wove into a lot of what we're doing now for construction, not just for real estate, not just for a residential, but also commercial as well.
That's beautiful. And how do you see the sustainability, sustainable homes, not just in Australia, but how do you see that trend growing in the next 10 years or so, 10, 20 years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, of course, energy consumption is one of the biggest ones, right? So, if we
Mhm.
can produce different materials and different products that allow us to minimize and take advantage of better energy usage and consumption, then that's great for everyone because then cost goes down,
Yes.
as well as then, our emissions and things like that. So in Australia in particular, we are coming up with a number of different products, building materials as far as because we don't have a huge amount of wood here, right?
Mhm.
Forestry, etc. Yes, we have a lot of bush, but eucalyptus isn't the best for building. So we've had to use a lot of brick as well, but now we've got a number of new product lines that really continue to sequester carbon as they're actually being used, such as hemp board, which is phenomenal. Hemp board it continues to sequester even after it's harvested and pressed into board.
Mhm.
It's also stronger than wood, so it's nearly the same density and strength as iron or steel.
Mhm.
Yet it's lighter than wood as well. So shipping means that there's less uh, cost in shipping because of the weight, but also things like double and triple pane windows. Here in Australia, that hasn't been a thing. So most buildings would have a single pane window, which is not efficient whatsoever. So just simple things like that as well. Windows, and in the US as well, a lot better manufacturing, which means, again, more sustainable building materials and product.
Right. How do you define sustainable luxury real estate, luxury development in the context of modern luxury real estate? Modern real estate. How do you define
Yeah, well, that's a
sustainable
really good question.
homes? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are just so many things that can go into that particular term, sustainability. All right. So it's not just about being net zero or energy consumption, but also the materials that we actually use in the construction as well. As well as then how are we blending that with the current environments as well. So whether it's the suburb or community that you're in, how are you actually using the biodiversity? How are
Right.
we integrating with the flora and fauna as well? So, you know, we have a number of different unique species down here in Australia. So even just regular birds we consider are quite unique. So there is things to consider as far as how we do overhead power lines as opposed to underground, or how we actually hook in different services and the infrastructure around that, how we migrate or move different fauna and flora around, and being able to utilize a lot more of sustainable energy as well. So making sure that we're putting in solar when we're actually building during construction. And we have new
Mhm.
materials like paint, for instance, or window. windows that actually are able to bring in and generate electricity from the window film or the paint as well. So that's a really unique one that's just coming out here in Australia. It's been developed out of our Australian Capital Territory
Mhm.
near Canberra. So a little
Canberra.
bit like Washington, D.C.
Right. Oh, wow. Amazing. That is just so beautiful. Like, when it comes to innovation, and I'm always, I love to know about trends and innovations that are happening. And you mentioned that you are in tech and data. That's what you do. So when it comes to data, how do you see the role of data shaping sustainable homes and designs? Does it impact in any way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything is data, right? So every single statistic, even buying and selling,
Yes.
that's data. So, how much a particular material, whether it's concrete or lightweight materials or steel, how is that going to last, etc. So all of that data does come into play, as well as then what are the grids and infrastructure look like? Because we actually are where I'm located building a completely new town center.
Oh,
So that's a unique thing. You don't really hear, oh, we're building a new town.
right. Yeah.
But it does, yeah, yeah. So, but from the get-go, I'm actually part of that whole entire planning process. And with the council and with the state, because we have some significant land holdings that we're trying to actually look at as far as what can we do from a community point of view that actually is almost regenerative as well. So, how do we use the water in that particular community? How can we actually recirculate it within the community? How can we make sure that we're actually providing enough electricity as well by solar generation that can be self-sustaining? So we're not actually pulling from others. The wastewater, we're recycling. The rainwater, where we're recycling within the community. So we're looking at all these different things to make sure that we can provide a community that's almost quote unquote off grid, but it's in the middle of Sydney, right? So it's
Incredible.
quite interesting. And all of that comes back from data. So we're using drone imagery and tile tests for soil and air,
Hmm.
humidity samples, as well as satellite imagery that we're pulling in to make sure that all the lay of the land, how we're actually looking at it as far as the different slopes. And so if we're having rainwater come off or stormwater coming off a certain area, how can we better capture it and make sure that we have less waste and not just pushing it out to the ocean, which has been in Australia the absolute trend, right? We just get a big pipe and we just pump it out to the ocean and we don't clean it as well. So it's picking up all the different chemicals, the oils and all that kind of stuff from the roads, etc. And here we're trying to actually look at, okay, can we actually self-contain all of that stormwater and runoff and rainwater and actually use it for a lot of the irrigation that we're going to have as far as integrated community gardens and lawns and parks, et cetera, within this particular new town center and community.
I love the idea that you created a whole new town, and it's a sense of community, a sense of belonging, but it's just such a unique way. And so when you are creating that community, created a new city within a city, uh, comes in regards to finance, then money and how much that's going to cost. So
Hmm.
when it comes from the finance
Yeah.
perspective, how do you how are you finding that the investors responding to the sustainability of what you're creating, the real estate point of view?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you know, everybody needs to still make money. and especially investors, because it is about impact, but it is also needing to get a return, because otherwise, if they don't get a return, then they can't do it again. Right. So we have to blend that to make sure that people are actually coming along for the ride because they want to do this type of impact, but
Hmm.
also it's viable as well. So there are a number of different funds called green bonds and green investing. So we are working with a number of local, but they're global as far as their reach. So we're
And what did
using
the green investing, what did they do?
so green bonds actually go out to large corporates
Yeah.
globally,
Hmm.
and also banks where, mostly not here in Australia, they're not big enough, but a lot of the European banks already have set aside funds that are geared towards specific goals and impact for green initiatives. And
Hmm.
so then like green bonds are specifically floated for infrastructure and for construction that is
Right.
that green impact. Yeah.
Hmm. And you mentioned
So
green investing. Is that the same kind of on the same lines?
it is, but it's actually more individual instead of large corporate or large banks
Right.
that it's set aside, right? So it's those high net worth individuals that are family offices that want to have a lasting impact on
Hmm.
the planet, and of course their local communities typically as well. So they either by themselves or in a consortium, and there's quite a number of consortiums out of the Middle East as well that want to have that impact. And it
Hmm.
really is a strategic element. They're not looking necessarily for an immediate ROI, but they're looking for that long-term viability as well. So they're able to put in the funds for 10 or 20 years to see that grow and then be able to do it again on this, yeah, do it again. So.
Right. And do you have investors also from abroad that are taking an interest as to, the developments that are happening with sustainability, but also luxury? Because I know luxury is huge. I have a friend, she's also into luxury real estate in Miami, and she talked about how the developments that are taking place there with, infuse like, spa kind of feel. And I think during COVID, all the developments, all the condos were catering to consumers. But during COVID, it was during the health and wellness of the mental health and well-being. Is that what you are finding that investors, because they having an interest as to what is happening, that they do want to have an invest in the sustainability, but also luxury too at the same time?
Yeah, it is about being able to provide value to the end consumers. So it is quite a big trend globally as well as here in
Hmm.
Australia is to really uplift your daily life as well. And being able to provide that community is Australia is a little bit different in that we have a very large continent, a very large island with very sparse population. However, that sparse population is quite concentrated in a number of different capital cities, as we call them: Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Darwin, Cairns, Brisbane, Perth, right? And there's very few other um, areas around Australia. There are regional cities, obviously, but it's very sparse in between. So people like to condense together because of, let's say, the ocean and the water and the resources, right? Um, so it is a little bit where we have to think about, okay, we have to think about the economics of who can actually live there as well. So there is different types of communities that we look at to make sure that everybody has affordable housing as well as just, luxury in the high end. So the types of communities that we are actually seeing now that are building, remodeling, or yeah, rebuilding newer buildings is that we're actually putting in a lot of those different services much closer to quote unquote home. So mixed use retail, construction. So you do have those day spas, you do have the saunas and jacuzzis and weight rooms, etc., for the residents if we're doing a bigger complex for sure. And that just makes everybody's life that much more enjoyable and centered around the people that you live around as well. During COVID here in Australia, we had, Melbourne that was locked down for nearly a year, 270 days, where literally we were only allowed to go outside certain day times, and we had different cycle and schedules for some communities as well. But a lot of us, even though we might be in the city, we have a lot of area and a lot of bush, so able to walk and get that fresh air, etc. And we're
Mhm.
still trying to keep that type of community as well. So a lot of open spaces, a lot of gardens, a lot of parks, etc., as well as then, your buildings and mixed use, and whether it's residential with commercial as well, so that we have those independent communities and not necessarily have to commute all the time into the
Yes.
city,
Hmm.
which used to be the case, right? Where the major town centers, because we only have about seven, and really Sydney was called the Big Smoke. Everybody still calls Sydney the Big Smoke. Why? Because it's the industrial financial capital. So everybody would go into the city, and that takes a lot of infrastructure to do that. But
Yes.
since COVID, we've actually got the technology, the additional infrastructure for our national broadband network here. So working from home, which I'm actually doing most of the time, I eliminate all of that commute and that transport, but still have community right around me.
Yes. And I think that's just so beautiful. It's good to have that balance, and it's good to have the community especially. And I was going to ask you too, but you pointed it to during COVID, and I was going to ask, how did COVID impact Australia in general? Or and you mentioned that some cities were affected, like but not so much, because that truly plays a huge difference, especially when it came to the well-being of individuals, and how important that is just to like get that fresh air. So your wellness was kept intact, and so Australia in general, some places were affected, not so many
Pretty much every city was affected as far as
affected. Yeah.
lockdowns, but Melbourne was definitely the worst.
Right.
Uh, 270 days in a row.
Oh wow.
They were literally locked in their homes. They were not able to leave their homes except for a scheduled hour every day, and each they had different schedules for each house, literally, so you wouldn't
Oh
bump into
wow.
people. Yeah, so it was quite locked down. And we did have quarantine areas in different times, but one of the big advantages was the advancement of remote technologies and the push
Hmm.
for infrastructure to support that. So in Australia, it really was the ability to move out of those central areas. So the actual CBDs, et cetera, and move out into more rural areas. And that really expanded the rural and regional communities as well to have a lot more viability in the next 20 years, because people did move out and were able to do their work remotely, etc. And so that really did help as well to expand the infrastructure, expand the cities, build new cities, and actually have additional communities that probably wouldn't have happened before if we didn't have COVID. So I think there were some great benefits out of it. Yeah.
Exactly. I think truly was. I think COVID, a lot of great things happened. I mean, there were a lot of businesses that did go out of business, so some were affected, but
Yes.
I think in general, I think a lot of good things happened. So that is really good. And So, with the innovation standpoint, how do you balance the innovation with a cutting edge technology, with the innovation, design and technology that you are involved with, um, that can truly have an impact on the development that is happening? So, how do you see the cutting edge from a standpoint?
Well, it's quite interesting because one of the number one areas that we can actually conserve quite easily is energy consumption. And when I ran the two hydroelectric dams in Washington State, it was 1997 through 2001, and back then I actually put fiber to every home
Oh, wow.
in my constituency and smart meters back then. So we were already looking at the peak times, etc., and being able to schedule washers and dishwashers, etc. That has not happened here in Australia, but only over the last, say, five-ish years. And
Mhm.
that's only because we were able to put through the whole new infrastructure for broadband here. And with that, that enabled smart meters. So just that small thing, and there's still quite a bit of the country left to do, especially the rural areas, to push those types of new infrastructure because just those simple things allow us to look at how we actually consume and see that data, how we consume, and then look at how we can provide maybe a better mix of when certain things could be done. But as we're building new homes, new residential, and new commercial, building in that smart infrastructure so that we don't have to have the lights on all the time. When we walk into the bathrooms, it turns on. If we leave the computer on, it'll, shut
Turn
down
it off.
the,
Yes,
the
yeah.
the monitors and things like that, right? Just like those things. Very simple, but yet very doable as well. So central shut off as you leave the home. Hit one button instead of having to run through all the rooms to turn off all the lights. Just simple things like that that are now possible, as well as, the timing of dishwashers and washing machines and things like that, that we can use the smart meters and peak times and things like that, so that it's easy to schedule and not have to remember, I've got to turn on the dishwasher now. The sun's out, it's morning, so I've got solar. But now we've got batteries as well, so that it can take advantage of the solar that we generate during the day to be able to use in the off peak, etc. So just simple things like that are things that we can do that really aid us in consumption of energy, which is the number one. The next would be raw materials. So the advent of new materials that we can use from biomass, things like hemp seed, to use for construction materials, which is phenomenal type stuff. They last 10 times longer as well. So building, let's say, just pallets. Just think about pallets for warehousing and construction, transport. Uh, the wood that we have to use for pallets, we can replace that with a hemp board, which lasts 10 times longer in cycle. So there's less maintenance. It's lighter weight, so there's less fuel that needs to be burned to lift the pallets, etc. It's stronger. Just simple things like that that we can do to replace. And yeah, yeah,
That is so amazing. I love that. But so the innovation you had back in 1997, you brought in fiber optics. And so when you talk about the innovation as to what's happening, it's almost like smart home. It's like introducing
yeah,
that smart home, like the millennials, they want
yeah.
everything smart. They want to, you just press a button and the curtains just, they drape down and etc. So it's almost like that. But the innovation that you foresaw back then is it is what's happening now. And that's
Yeah.
what truly amazes me is with the technology. There's just it's just so beautiful how the technology is impacting, real estate and beyond.
Oh, absolutely. It costs money to innovate, but as time goes on, that cost decreases. So the more we're able to put in for research and development and to innovate, the better our lives keep on getting. And we see that through the vehicles that we drive, through the innovations in just home living, the smart home, etc. It would be so expensive back then, 20 or 40 years ago, but now it's every day when you start building it. And if we look at it as just that next evolution of how we can actually better ourselves and make sure that we conserve and be stewards of the resources that we're given, then we're doing so much better for ourselves and the future generations to come. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And so let's take a look at when it comes to innovation, let's take a look at AI. How do you see
yeah,
the
sure.
role? Because I know you're involved with AI, especially with JT. How do you see AI having an impact with the sustainable luxury homes development? How is development in real estate? How is AI impacting this industry?
There's actually quite a wide range of how AI is actually being utilized in this industry, from prop tech to fintech to compliance tech. So I've got a number of friends that are in the compliance tech alone. So AI being able to look at a particular block as well as then bring in the information from the local council as well as the state, looking at all the infrastructure and being able to collate that in a strategy for a particular property location. But also just how you might design a building as well, or design a home for that particular environment. So it might mean that we change the different materials, etc., or the design that if we just shift it just a little bit, it allows us the slope of the roof to have better solar for how the sun goes across in the winter as opposed to the summer, and just take advantage of that just 1% or 2% better design. And that makes a huge difference. So there's massive amounts of that, as well as then just that, the smart homes we were previously talking about, building in AI as well, so that, oh yeah, okay, I know that on a Thursday, the family usually comes home at this time, so I can kick on the air conditioning at that, like half an hour before they come home, so they don't have to have it, full bore when they get home. And then I can automatically shut it off and I can look at what the weather is like today. So I don't necessarily just blindly turn on the air conditioning or turn it off, etc. So just those little small factors to build it in as well. And
Mhm.
that innovation of AI in home tech, in the prop tech, compliance tech. Yeah, there's lots of areas that it's really looking to help.
That's beautiful. And yeah, AI is just the way to go, and how it's just revolutionizing so many industries. It's just so cool, where it's heading and where we are headed. So we talked about the innovation. Let's talk about the trends. I mean, we just talked about it. It's almost like the smart home. So what are the trends you see emerging in sustainability, and how do you see that shaping in the next decade?
Well, I think one of the biggest trends is education. And I think it's really important that we have education so that we understand really what sustainability is, because I believe there's a lot of misconception about certain elements of sustainability that might be way too theoretical and not actually practical, as well as the other side, which we don't need sustainability at all. sustainable, right? And so we need to
So,
blend those and
Daniel,
make sure that we actually do them.
could you
Yeah.
define for our audience, could you define a sustainability just so that the audience can understand as to what that might be like?
Sure, sure. So there's the term sustainability is actually quite broad.
Hmm.
And so sustainability can include the environmental metrics. So the things like raw materials consumption, water consumption, energy consumption, which has an impact to the emissions that we might have as far as carbon, nitrogen, etc. Those are environmental, but there's also things like what's sustainability for a particular product or service, which actually rolls up to is it sustainable for this brand or this organization, and how that then sustains us as humanity. So things like organics, right? That's a part of thinking about sustainability, about ethical manufacturing, about modern slavery, about health and wellness. So all of those actually combine to sustainability, because if we're just solely, let's say, worried about carbon emissions, we might actually be damaging ourselves
Right.
because we're
Yeah.
not looking at healthy or organic food, for
Hmm.
instance. And so we're going to use high amounts of synthetic materials because it's actually more efficient and more cost effective to use that in our food production if we're actually looking at one sole factor, right? So we have to look at it holistically as well. So including in sustainability is regenerative farming as well. So the regenerative farming is things like swapping crops and it's almost regenerative farming is almost like going back 200 years and saying what did we used to do? Well, we
Right.
used to
Yeah.
have smaller farms. We used to have animals as well. The animals actually fertilize the crops naturally and organically. So it's a little bit of that, but actually with a lot of smarts. So for instance, we might have a cattle ranch or a cattle station that's combined now with a wheat farm or a sorghum farm or a green bean farm, and the cattle we no longer have fences. We've got GPS around the cow's neck, and so we can say, okay, a virtual fence, we want them to be in this particular area. So if they kind of start to wander out, it jiggles and they don't like that. So they stay in this particular area, which means any of their any of their stool, right, is the manure actually stays in that area and starts to organic. It starts to fertilize that area. So when we look at agriculture, it's not necessarily about the output. It's actually, if we look at the input. So I've got one client for my tech side of the business that is a prime producer, and they, over the last couple of years, specifically looked at the health of the soil. And
Hmm.
if they targeted the health of the soil, what kind of microbes, bacteria, etc., are supposed to be in the soil, it actually turned out that they quadrupled their production. They didn't realize that that was going to be the outcome, but they wanted better nutrient ground so that that would translate into a better nutritious product. So when you compare their product, let's say green beans, with somebody else's green beans, the nutritional factors are phenomenally different, as well as the fact that they're not using a lot of nitrates, which means nitrates are down in that product. So that's actually healthier as well. So they focused on the soil health, which meant that plant health was much better, which meant that the product that came out was much better for us as far as consumption, right? So that's sustainability as well. So thinking about that, we bring all those things together in order to have more sustainable life.
Absolutely. And that's what we need to have. It comes down to our health
Mm.
and, what are we putting into our bodies and how that's going to impact us in the long run. So, Daniel, how do you educate your clients and investors for the long term value of sustainable living, sustainable homes.
Yeah, well, it comes back down to data, right? So if you show them the data, this is what we're building, this is how the data impacts it, this is the outcome, this is the ROI, this is not just ROI as far as return of profits, but also the ROI on the land, on the building materials, on the entire construction industry, etc. So, as we're looking at this, how do we actually help impact the changes that we need to take place so that it is viable as far as economics, but also viable for the community, viable for health, viable for humanity, etc. And so, looking at that, it is about education of strategic mindsets and being able to give them little by little understanding of, okay, if I change just this one product, this is the impact. If I change this one, this is the impact. If I change the transport for this to get this here, this is the impact. So again, it is the ability to tell a story, the
Mhm.
narrative about it. So storytelling is huge, but then supporting it with that information and giving them the ability to see that information and support it so that we know it's not quote unquote greenwashing or telling a story and not having something to actually support it with the real pragmatic information.
Exactly. So have it supported with data. That
Yeah,
makes a difference.
100%. Mhm.
So what's the one common misconception, Daniel, that you find that is happening when it comes to um, do people have doubts, or what are some of the misconceptions that people may have about the sustainable development? Are there any?
Yeah, there's lots of misconceptions, right? So, uh, there's such a wide variety, but it really comes back to how we start the whole process, right? As well. So, we have to also, as consumers, whether it's a grocery or our home that we buy, we have to look at it to make sure that one, it's affordable and viable, but we have to understand as well that it's going to any sort of change is going to cost us, you know, our pocketbooks, literally. But we also have to look at it and make sure that that money doesn't get stuck in the supply chain, and that the margins are appropriate for each person and organization in that supply chain, that it does get back to the original prime producer. So even in construction, what is our prime producer, right? It's the mining for materials, it's wood production, right? For groceries, it's back to the raw materials, which is the prime producer, and everything needs to start with them, because in essence, unless we go back to the ground,
Mhm.
we're not actually getting the benefit, right? So only back to the prime producers is where we can actually get the credits and the real viability from sustainability coming through, because it has to start with them, and we have to give them the funds, that we have to give them the capability to actually enact farm protocol changes or forestry protocol changes, etc. Because if we don't, and we still want them to be commercially viable, and we're skimping on, giving them some profits and reward, then they're only going to produce something that's going to be viable for them, which is then the synthetics, the the cheapest thing that they can do so that they can actually make something in their life as well. So we have to make sure that it actually flows back throughout the entire supply chain. And that's a misconception that it can't cost me anything. It actually, we all have to be in this together. We are a global community now, and so we need to all do things together. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that, oh, it's not impacting me and I don't need to do something. Actually, we do. Whether that is because we want a sustainable product, or an organic a vegetable, it's going to cost us an extra cent or 2 cents, right? But if we do that, then we're able to enact those transformations and those changes.
Right. Indirectly, it does, it does impact us on a subconscious, whether we may choose to believe that or not. But I think indirectly, like as you said, I agree with that. Indirectly, it does impact and it does affect. Your final
Mm.
question, Daniel. This has been such an enlightening conversation. I love, and I
Fine.
love about
Yeah.
the innovation and the trends that are happening with sustainable luxury development. So thank you so much for highlighting as to what we need to learn to know about sustainable luxury homes because it's truly the way of the future and it's
Oh,
way
absolutely.
happening. Yes.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely. We definitely have to look at it. We have to be able to put new innovation in everything that we do, right? Yeah, we definitely have to.
yes. Your final question, Daniel. What advice would you give to an aspiring developer who wants to specialize in sustainable luxury home, like real estate? What advice would you give?
That's a really good question. It's not easy. It's a very difficult industry, first and foremost, let alone trying to push the industry into more sustainable practices. One of the biggest things that I see in the construction industry is the non-reuse of previous materials. Or when you are building, oh, I've dropped that nail, who cares? Right? And it just gets swept and into the rubbish, right? Instead of picking it. I mean, some things like this, 100 years ago, we would have picked up that nail, right? Because it was a scarce resource. We couldn't just, go out to Bunnings or Home Depot, etc., and get a whole new box of nails, right? And it cost money because steel was not readily available. But now, over the last 50 years, it's just, oh, it's easier and cheaper not to pick up that nail or have the drywall, that cut not reused, just toss it and we'll just get a whole new pallet in. So those specific things like that, reusing construction materials, being much more efficient in how we deploy the materials, how we reuse, etc. That's the number one thing I see in construction as far as the ability to be more sustainable. And that's a simple thing. It's not even changing the product, right? It's not even becoming more efficient in the energy that we actually build into the home. It's actually just as we're constructing, be a lot more diligent on wastage. And that's a huge one because that impacts everything. As far as, if we are less efficient on the deployment of the materials that we actually use in construction, it goes into the tip, into the waste, and then we need bigger landfill, etc. And we don't necessarily know how that's going to impact that particular environment of that landfill, etc. And how long, well, until we can reuse, etc. So that's probably the number one thing if somebody was getting into a property development, and especially construction, is how do you actually look at the waste material while you're constructing? Number
Right.
one thing that if we can solve and better do that, construction projects will be so much more efficient, and that would be huge on the sustainability of that product in the end anyway. But then of course, we can look at the materials that we're actually using, the sustainability of that particular material, the ratings for those energy efficiency elements, looking at putting in the innovation like we talked about before, the smart home as far as features and AI into the smart home, but
Mhm.
also things like capture of rain, right? And having rain tanks. Just a simple thing like that. I mean, especially in commercial construction of large buildings and city skylines, the ability to capture rainwater just as a default of, okay, instead of just allowing it to go into the storm water and out to sea or wherever, but to capture that and use that as an internal, water can not necessarily potable, but using for irrigation, and the sky gardens or lawns inside, uh, but also using that and capturing that. Also, then solar just by default having solar panels built into the design as well. So those are four things that we could do very easily for any new builds and construction.
Right. And do you see, I mean, apart from this sustainable home developments that are taking place in Australia, around Australia, but are you seeing there's a lot of growth when it comes to solar panels in the homes? Because we're starting to
It's
see here
one
in
of the big,
Canada, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. In Australia, because we do have such strong sun down here,
Yeah,
it is. It's not a mandate, but nearly every home has some form of
right.
solar on
Yeah.
it. So, and we have it's not as quite as lucrative as it used to be, but you can feed back into the grid as well from your individual home.
Hmm.
So there is incentive to do it as well. And of course, pricing for solar panels and now batteries as well have significantly decreased, and the technology has gotten significantly better as well. So yeah, I'd say pretty close to 75% of all homes in Australia have solar on it. So, and all new construction of commercial buildings are supposed to have some form of percentage of their energy consumption be from their own generation of solar. So, hmm.
Beautiful.
And some of
Love.
the bigger, I met with, so there's a couple of very large organizations that do most of the shopping centers in Australia. So one of them being West Farmers, and they own Coles, which is the number two. Well, there's two major ones. There's three overall, but yeah, Coles, IGA, and Woolworths, and the head of energy at Coles for West Farmers, uh, by 2030, I think it is, will have 90% of their energy being renewable, primarily solar. And so they're going through all of their shopping centers and looking at installing solar on all of their malls, etc.
That's
So.
beautiful. Daniel, this has been such a powerful conversation. I loved how, where innovation is going, where technology and the growth that's happening, not just with the sustainability, but also like when it comes to real estate, like where the landscape of real estate and the developments that we are seeing taking place. So thank you so much for highlighting as to what we need to expect, what we need to learn. So thank you so much for sharing such valuable insights um, at the strategic innovation, with data and the growth, the impact with the smart design that we talked about and how that truly is going to impact. Daniel, where can people connect with you and how can we support you?
Yeah, great. So I'm pretty much on every single social out there, I think. My main one is LinkedIn, so W Daniel Cox the third. I'm the only one on LinkedIn that I'm aware with that that name, so it should be fairly easy. And all my socials are the same, so W Daniel Cox the third. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X, etc. So yeah. And happy for you to connect with me, and I'm quite on top of all my messages, so you can message me, and I'll be able to get back to you. So I really appreciate you having me on, Alka, and it's been a pleasure and a great discussion.
Absolutely, likewise. And yes, you do. You're very thorough. You're prompt on getting back the messages that we've gone back and forth. Yes, I truly appreciate you, Daniel, coming on, and thank you so much to each and every one for tuning in today's conversation. Stay tuned for more Ask the Experts, for more amazing guests that come on and give value, because that's what it's all about, sharing value, and for us to, for you to learn, and so that we can grow, we can all grow together. So thank you so much to all of you. If you've enjoyed today's conversation with the incredible Daniel Cox, like and subscribe to the channel, because in this way we can grow and bring amazing guests on the show. We can bring more value to you. So thank you so much to each and every one for tuning in today's podcast. Thank you,
Thank
Daniel.
you.